Commentary from the Edge. Joining me at this time is the founding member of the Israel Group. He's the founding member and President Barry Nussbaum. Barry, welcome to the show.
Nice to be with you.
Barry, recently President Obama said that Benjamin Netanyahu represents his country's best interest the best way he knows how to, while President Obama represents America's best interest the best way he knows how to. But on the issue of national security, do they not coincide?
You would think so, Rick. We're closest allies with Israel of every government in the Middle East. They're the only government that consistently has our back, and yet we're treating them as an enemy while we're making great friendship strides with Iran right now in Geneva. All
right. Now, one thing I want to get to. So the answer is you would expect our national interest to coincide.
Absolutely. No question.
All right. Now, you have sources inside of Israel. You're the founder of the Israel Group. You're the president of the Israel Group. You say that your sources, there are rumors swirling on the ground that have not been made public yet. What is it?
What we're hearing as of earlier today, the deal is basically done in Tehran.
The Iranian nuclear deal.
Yeah, the deal is done with Tehran right now in Switzerland between Kerry and his counterpart on the Iranian side.
Will it be a written deal or a verbal deal? New York Times said verbal yesterday.
Yeah, and it's crazy, as bizarre as it may seem. Iran doesn't want anything in writing. They want it to be a handshake. And imagine this for a bizarre scenario, if you will. Kerry comes back to the United States Congress, and he tells Congress what he thinks Iran agreed to verbally and shook on. The Supreme Leader hears his side of the story and presents it to the Iranian people. They could be two wildly divergent deals.
Of course.
Nothing is being written down and being signed on.
All right, bottom line. Your sources in the Middle East tell you that a deal has been reached in Switzerland between the U.S. and the Iranians on a nuclear deal, and that it may be announced as early as Sunday, and that we're not sure if it's even going to be in writing.
Yeah, and nobody knows what the final verbal agreements are going to be, Rick, but I can tell you that everything that was promised as short ago as a year has been walked back on. There were going to be no centrifuges. Now there's probably 4,000 or 5,000. There was going to be no enrichment. Now there's significant enrichment. There was going to be wide open inspections before the sanctions were going to be lifted. Iran insisted, and apparently we have agreed, that the sanctions will come off before full inspections of all the sites. And on that subject, Rick, the IAEA just yesterday said that the existing UN regulations on inspections, Iran is in breach of 11 of the 12 different clauses on inspection. So right now they're in compliance with 1 out of 12, and the thought of another couple dozen of inspection requirements is ridiculous.
It's a joke. Listen, what's happened here, if what you're saying turns out to be accurate.
I hope it's not, but that's what I'm hearing.
And you place faith and credibility in these sources.
Yes, sir.
Basically, the president has just thrown Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly Netanyahu, under the bus.
No question. No question. Not to mention our Arab allies in the Middle East. The Sunnis.
Oh, of course.
The Sunnis are beside themselves.
Listen, we've seen Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt want to ally with Israel against Iran on this. What might you expect the reaction to be by Israel first?
I think Israel is going to say the same thing that Netanyahu's been warning the world about, much as was done in the 30s. Don't listen to Chamberlain. This is a really bad deal. The Hitler guy is not going to keep his word and is not going to start a war. And as we talked about several weeks ago, 2 weeks later, as you pointed out, he did start a war. Iran has been promising from the very beginning death to America, death to Israel. As recently as 3 days ago in Tehran, there were 100,000 people chanting death to Israel and death to America. That's the company that we're meeting with and making a deal with possibly today.
Meanwhile, on a different note but related, you say that not only did Barack Obama conspire, if you will, to get Benjamin Netanyahu defeated in Israeli elections, he's now doubling down. He being President Obama.
Absolutely.
How is he doubling down?
A number of things. If you kept up with the upset out of Israel, as I'm sure you're aware, Netanyahu didn't get a congratulatory call from the president for quite some time.
All right, so that's sophomorish.
Right. When he did get the call, it wasn't, hey, great job, happy to have you back. It was a lecture on how policy is going to be conducted by the United States going forward. In other words, we expect a left-wing coalition government. That didn't happen. The government was announced yesterday, and it's a middle to right-wing government. Netanyahu is now back in power for another 4 years.
So President Obama told Netanyahu this is what we expect.
Apparently so, yes, and it didn't happen. Number two, he sent his chief of staff this week to speak before J Street.
President Obama did.
Yes, he did. And the speech was about ending the occupation in the West Bank, using the exact words that Hamas uses about Israel.
Now, here's what I don't understand. Everyone's pushing for this two-state solution, everyone on the left. I believe it's, you know, I understand it's a feel-good story, but the Palestinians themselves don't even want a two-state solution. They don't want Israel to exist.
No, they want a one-state solution. And in fact, all the surveys coming out of the West Bank talk about the fact that the Palestinians on the West Bank expect to take over Israel. And Hamas, to this day, is saying the same thing.
Final question. Keep your answer brief, please, in the answer to the time. When are Jewish voters in America going to stop voting Democrat?
I think what's going to happen when this deal is announced with Iran, finally the truth is going to be evident that this president, regardless of what he's promised in the last years, betrayed all Americans, including Jewish Americans who support Israel, on the subject of peace in the Middle East.
No question about it. All right, Barry Nussbaum, troubling story. The Middle East is a tinderbox. We'll see if this rumor that you hear from sources on the ground in the Middle East turns out to be true. Let's hope not. Thank you for joining us. The administration needs to stop worrying about President